So in this demo, I'm just going to quickly show you how to take a piece of your work and edit it very quickly inside of Photoshop. Let me just start by going to the Finder and opening up my image. I'm just going to double click on it to open it up. So you can see this is the image here. And to open up in Photoshop, I'm just going to drag it into Photoshop, or I could do File Open, and that should open up my image. Command minus lets me zoom out of my image. Command plus lets me zoom in, or Control if you're on a PC. And this lets me see, this is my image here that I'd like to use. This is an image of my work. I hope that if you do take a picture of your work, you're not so far away from it. I kind of took this picture of my work just so you guys could see the fact that I shot this outside with sort of nice flat neutral lighting on a sort of a gray overcast day in the shade. So the lighting is very flat throughout. And you can see I just set this on the grass, and I've set a white piece of paper underneath that just so that the grass, the green tone of that doesn't bounce back up onto my work. And I've got a nice clean surface. But the first thing I notice here is that if I was to edit my image here with the crop tool, it's not square. Yeah, so if I was to drag this in, you'll see that I'm just using a crop tool here. It's really a bit wonky. Yeah, I didn't take that with a tripod. I just shot this handheld. So if I was to crop this with the crop tool, which I'll just demo now, I'm just going to go scale all the elements up to kind of roughly where I want to have it, just so you can see how not square it is. Remember, in Photoshop, to set a transformation like the crop tool, I have to hit the enter button to actually make that transform. So I'm going to hit the enter or the return button, and that makes that transform. You see, even now, oh, really wonky. This is not a very straight image. But inside of the Essentials mode, I can click on another tool that's hidden underneath my crop tool. That's my perspective crop tool. And basically the way this tool works is I tell it what my square thing is, and then it goes, all right, we'll make this square for you. And what you want to do is you want to start in the upper left corner, then go down to the lower left corner, then go to the lower right corner, to the upper right corner. And there's my image. All right. I'm just going to command plus or control plus if you're on a PC to zoom in. And when I'm zoomed in, I can hold down the space bar. You see I'll change my mouse to a little hand. It lets me navigate around, and I can adjust. So I can move this over, and I can make a quick little adjustment on the image that way. So I can crop it. You see, okay, maybe there it's still a bit wonky, so I can just move that in. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. That's going to keep all of my image, but remove the white and straighten that out. Alright, so I'm going to hit command minus to zoom out. And when I'm happy with that, what I need to do, just like with the other crop tool, I need to hit the enter key to set the transformation. Voila, transformed. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is I want to adjust this. You can see, I know for a fact that this image is a black and white image. If your image is a color image, you might want to, do the following step. For a black image like this, I could just desaturate it, and that would get rid of the yellow tones. But if I want to sort of keep some of the more subtle tones, and I don't want it to be black and white, I'd want to first adjust the white balance. So to do that, I'm going to use an adjustment layer. I could also go image adjust, but that wouldn't give me the opportunity later to maybe make a refinement to that if I don't find that right. And before I really start to adjust my image, the first thing I'm going to do is check the brightness on my monitor. I don't want to be working with my brightness all the way up on my monitor, so I just want to make sure that I'm working with about sort of a 50% brightness to give myself that accuracy to kind of know that, well, maybe my screen's a bit bright right now, and maybe I wouldn't quite see that sort of subtle contrast if I'd turn my brightness down just a little bit. So sometimes if you find that if you're working and your work's coming out very, very dark when you print it, it might be that your monitor brightness is giving you a false sense of what your image looks like. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do adjustment layers. Remember, adjustment layers are over here on the right-hand side. They're kind of hidden under the properties. And the first one I'm going to use is a curves tool. And the curves tool is the one that looks like a little graph in the middle. And what adjustment layers do is they create a little layer above my image. So they're not actually changing my image. They're going to change everything below them. So my image below this is going to have this effect on it. And let me just move this down just a little bit so you can see all of the little buttons there. This here basically is allowing me to kind of see at the very top upper hand corner my whitest white of my image and my down in the lower left-hand corner, my blackest black. And you can see I don't really have anything in my blacks yet, and my whites are almost a little bit too white. So what I can do is first set my white balance by telling the machine what is white or what's sort of 50% gray. I really don't have 50% gray on this, so I'm going to try and tell it what's my white area. And I don't want to get my brightest patch of white, I want to get my average sort of shade of white. I'm going to click on that, and you'll notice that when I do, helps if I'm on my actual background layer and doing an adjustment. My curves, and come on, double click on that should get you back to the tool. My thing was just having a moment. And I can kind of adjust this way, and it should tell me what my tones are. Yeah, so okay. Then I might want to adjust my blacks accordingly. So I might want to move my blacks, this little arrow down here, down. I might want to push my midtones down a little bit. I might want to increase my midtones. I might want to go into individual colors. I might want to go into the reds. I might want to take away my reds or lighten my reds or increase the reds. You'll see if I go through individual colors how that changes the tone of my image and the feel of my image. If I go through individual colors, I might go through greens, or what I could also do is I could just adjust the saturation. So I could go into my hue and saturation, which is adding another adjustment layer on top of that. And for example, for this I could desaturate that. Or I could increase the saturation, so I could do that. Ah, rainbow, yeah. So I might decrease the saturation. Now with my image here, you'll notice that I do have a bit of a glare, yeah, right here, that white spot. Now, if you've got something like a small adjustment that needs to be made, there's a couple of different ways of doing that. So I'm going to go to my background layer, and I never want to work on my original image. I actually want to make a copy of this. To make a copy, I'm going to hit Command or Control J, and that will duplicate that layer. Or, of course, you can always right-click on it and say, I never do it this way because I just want to say Command J. You could just say Duplicate Layer, which is all the way at the top of that list there. So now that I've got a duplicate layer, this allows me to make an adjustment. And if in case I don't, I'm new to Photoshop, I'm making mistakes, I'm not doing everything right, at least I've got this little adjustment layer here where I can undo things. So let's say here, this area is a bit too white and I want to darken that area. There's a tool to do that. So on the left hand side here, there is a blur tool, sharpen tool, and then there's a little tool here called the dodge tool, the burn tool. And your Photoshop might show you what the tools do right time you sort of open up, but a burn tool basically makes an area brighter or darker. And I need to make sure I'm on this layer. To tell what layer you're on, you'll notice that that layer has a lighter shade of gray. And I'm just going to go through this area. I'm just going to go over it just a little bit, just to darken that area up. I can make my brush smaller too by using the minus, the open bracket key on my keyboard. It allows me to have a little more darker, refined area to fix this area that is a bit too bright. And every time I do that, it's going to make that brighter, darker. Yeah? And a good edit shouldn't be noticed, if that makes sense. Like, the instant you see something, it might not be right. Also, do you notice you have got a nice soft brush? You want to use a nice sort of soft brush for this. And you want to do sort of an appropriate size brush. You might want to open bracket key to change the size of your brush if it needs it. And I'm just going to keep going over an area till it starts to look right. Now this is my work. I know this work. I know what I want to have for this work. So this adjustment might not be the adjustment you're making for your work. So let's say your work's slightly different. Let's say your work has an area that is too dark, or you want to lighten an area. So what I want to do is do the opposite. I could do the opposite. I could go to the dodge tool, and I would lighten an area if I click on it. So you can see that it's a very big brush right now. But as I click it, lighten that area up. Remember to undo, always Command or Control Z, and that will undo. So I had the very big brush for that, so you can see that that's a very big brush. Now what I could do is I could do the sponge tool. Now the sponge tool, because I've turned down my saturation, I'm just going to turn off that adjustment layer. You see, as I turn off that adjustment layer, all of those things came back because I click the little eyeball icon. That turns that layer on and off for me. I don't have to delete it to see it without it. I can just turn it on and off with the eyeball icon in my layers over there. And if I go over this area now with that, you'll see that takes the tone out of that. That desaturates that area for me. So that's just another way of removing saturation, but I'm going to turn that back on because I kind of don't. Maybe I will keep a little bit of that. Or maybe I turn this layer's opacity down just a little bit so it's not affecting it as much. So there's little things that you can do inside this that, you know. The nice thing about the sort of layers here, as you can see over here, I can adjust how much it's visible or invisible. Yeah? And I can play around with things like that as well. So I can make little refinements within Photoshop just because I've got all the options there. I haven't limited myself with what I can do with the edit. The other thing I can use is there's more little tools here to, you'll probably have this little tool that looks like a plaster over here. And this is a spot healing brush tool. And let's say there's an area I want to get rid of. Let's say I want to get rid of that line. I want to make sure I'm on my background layer. And if I go over an area with that, that removes that. And it tries to figure out what should be there. So with this image here, I've got these little sort of perforated lines, and the AI figured it should be that. If I go over it again, it might pick something else. So sometimes with this tool, if the first time doesn't work, go over it again, and it should give you what you're looking for. And this is a good thing to kind of use on like a small little area that needs fixed. Like if I want to remove that line there, I can go over that, and hopefully it does it. But if it doesn't do what you like, try it again. Or if I'm going to just hit Command Z to undo that again, I could do it a different way. If I've got a much larger area and that's not working, I could use the patch tool. And the patch tool, the way this works is basically I select the area I want to fix, so I want to fix this area, and then I tell it what I want it to fix it with by dragging it to the area I want it fixed with. And if I let go, it fixes it with that. If I do this again and I pick a different area, it will fix it with that. And if I hit Command D to deselect, you'll see it gives it sort of like a little fixed area. So that's just another way of doing almost the exact same thing. Let me just undo that again, and I'll show you another way of doing pretty much the same thing. Would be the healing brush tool. The healing brush tool works like the other one, except I tell it what I want it to copy. So I need to set it what I want it to copy by holding down the Alt key and saying, this is the area that I want it to copy. So I want it to copy this area here. And now if I go over here, do you see how my mouse looks like that area? So it's going to apply that area now to where I'm going to put my pen down and draw. So it's a very specific way of fixing something. So if I want to fix something, I can hold the Alt key, tell it what to fix, and as I draw out, it will see the little plus sign. That's telling me what it's fixing with. This is really important if you are doing this one. Make sure that you reassign that when you go from area to area. So if I were to draw here, you'll notice that it'll give me a funky little line because I've gone all the way to the edge of the page. So just keep that in mind if and when you are using that tool. So let's say I'm happy with this and I'm ready to save this for my portfolio. What I want to do next is I want to check my image size. So I'm going to go to Image, and I'm pretty sure that this image is going to be quite small because I didn't take a very large picture here, and I cropped it down. You saw that big crop I did of that image, so that's going to change what my image is. Now, I can change my units here to centimeters because I think it's a little bit easier for you guys to imagine. So now you can see here that the maximum size of my image, because it's so scaled down, is 17 centimeters by 33 centimeters, which is quite large. Not the largest image in the world, but large enough. If you're like me, if you haven't noticed the accent, I'm American, so I like to think in inches. So 6 by 13, okay, yeah. So I can switch this around, and also I can see what this is in pixels. So particularly if you are submitting this onto a website or for web design, I might submit this and I might want to quickly see, for portfolio work in particular, well, how many pixels this is. Imagine that your screen, the standard screen size, the width of that is 920 pixels by 1080 pixels, yeah? 1920 wide, 1080 high, that's the size of a standard HD screen. That's the resolution at 72 pixels per inch. Now if I change that for print to 300, yeah, you see how it's scaled everything up and multiplied it? It's going to try and resize it. Now 300 from 72, that's over 3 times the size. So if I want to try not to have it resample, I'm just going to change that back to 72. I could change that, turn that off. I could turn off resampling. So now if I do 300, it's going to just limit the size of my image. So I still have the same pixel quality, but it's going to limit to how big that is. So now it's teeny tiny if I change it to 300 dpi. So I know that with my image, I'm definitely probably only going to use this for print, or for web and not for print, because it is such a small image. But luckily for this year, most of your portfolios will be online, so this isn't a big issue. But this lets me know, okay, that's how big my image is. And if I want to resize my image, if there's a specific measurement, if it needs to be let me just change it back to pixels. Let's say they've told you a specific size. Let's say they've told you that this image is going to be, if they don't want anything that's larger than 10 centimeters. I can put in 10 centimeters and that will resize that, yeah? Or I could put in 10 centimeters here. And if I put resample in, that would resample everything. So if I put 72 in there, and I click on resample, and I change the fit to custom, you'll see also too there's default sizes there as well. So I can change this once again to pixels, and I could say that I want my width to be, I want my height to be 900, yeah? That will automatically resample everything, so I know my size is now 900 by 470. So I know what size my image is here, and I can press OK. Now I wouldn't want to do that to my main image. I keep in mind that I've done this to an image that I'm saving for online, and I might want to keep this as a version. So first off, I always want to save whenever I've made corrections as a Photoshop file. So I'm going to go File, Save As. I'm just going to quickly save this file as image portfolio. I'll just save it to my desktop. Then what I'm going to do is, I'd like to save this for web because I'm going to save this for portfolio. Now, if I'm going to take this into InDesign, I don't have to, I wouldn't recommend that you guys resample it. InDesign will do the compression, so I could just do that like that. But if they want a specific image, if you want to give them a specific image, I could do File, Export, Export As, and then especially if they've given you size requirements for a portfolio image, you can see here basically what sort of size it's going to be. So I can change this from PNG to JPEG. This is one way of seeing what sort of things are, but the better tool is, I'm just going to cancel for a second. If I go File, and I say Export, and I say Save for Web, this is going to give me a different window. And this window here, I could do 2 up, for example. That will show 2 versions of my thing. I can put different settings in this. So I can say that this one here is a JPEG, and I will say that I want my quality to be the highest quality possible. And then I can see, okay, there's my image size. And then you see down here, that there is telling me the file size of what it's going to be. And I can zoom in, I can check that it looks okay compared to my original image. If I turn this down, I can see, okay, let's say, that's quite a small image, but let's say they've got a really strict limit on the file size. Maybe they don't want anything over a couple of megabytes. This is not even a couple of megabytes, a couple of kilobytes. Kilobytes are smaller than megabytes, guys. Let's say if I want quality 50, I can see there what that's going to be. Now if I just want to try a different type of image, if they say like they want a PNG, I can see what that's going to look like as a PNG. You can see there's a slight difference in the tone in that. I can see how many colors. I can say, alright, I want 256. You see that that's changed the file size for me. So this just allows me to see all of the information, and actually too, I can resize my image here as well. I can say that I want my image to be 50% or 30% of the original size. I can put that in there as well, and I can see how many sizes it is, what size it is in the pixels. And this is once again is going to save this as a copy. So I can click Save, and I say Image Portfolio 1.png, save to the desktop. I now know my image file size, and I've seen that it looks okay, but even before I've exported it from Photoshop. So those are just some quick little tips for helping you guys retouch an image. I hope that you found this helpful, and best of luck with it. If you guys have any questions, please send me an email.